we thought we'll start with a little bit about background on how you got started, and then we'll talk a little bit about collaboration, and then your philosophies when it comes to your work.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start a bit like how you started your podcast with, you know, where did you start and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah.
You know, that keeps getting turned back on us. You know? We're really sorry we do it.
Yeah.
You go first.
Well, I went to film school. You know, from my background's got nothing to do with film. In a coastal town in southern England, and didn't have any connection to the film world or anything. And I just kind of wandered into art college, and that led to film school, and that led to shooting documentaries and films. I mean, it was like, yeah, chance, really.
Yeah, I started in university at studying Latin and Greek. Not that this was anything I was going to do anything with, but it was something I knew I wouldn't do on my own. And while I was in university, I did these multimedia shows, one being on rape, but they didn't want us to say anything about date rape, but that was the main concern. So it made me think about images and how to convey that without the university knowing that I was doing that. So using landmarks and stuff like that. And then when I moved to New York, I started in a film lab, and then became a script supervisor. Then we got married, and
Yeah, we met on a film together.
Yeah.
Together ever since.
Yeah, and we started collaborating, which meant I stopped working, and then I started working.
Oh, you were
together.
working, but
Yeah.
you stopped working as a script
Yeah,
supervisor.
right. Yeah. And that's our story. Both of us didn't know when we were growing up that this is what we would be.
Yeah. So, you know, you're both, the cool thing about it is, you know, meeting on a film set and actually growing as professional partners as well as partners in life, which is awesome. You know, how does that work, and what is it like? What's the nature of your professional and working relationship?
Well, I mean, it's a relationship's a relationship. I mean, we're both, you know, we kind of live film, really.
Yeah.
Well, up until recently, you know, I mean, it's yeah, we would go from one film to another, and it was just our life, you know.
And it's something that we're both passionate about, and the advantage is because we live together and we have communication, and we kind of know what each other is thinking, we can work very easily together, because Roger knows I'm not going to say something that he doesn't think, because people ask me all the time, oh, are we using this light, or are we doing that? And if I know it, I know it. If I don't, I just ask him. But
Yeah.
it's
also neither of us, we don't have to worry about bringing our work home, because
we do. We're living it.
We're living it, you know.
Yeah.
Who we are.
Yeah. And it just works, and it works better and better each time, because it's not a lot of people don't work this way. So it was something that people had to get used to, and then they got used to, if they got him, they got me. And yeah, we like it.
So yeah, on your IMDb, James, it says that you do digital workflow consultant, but I know like what you do is a lot more complicated and more than that.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you can explain that to the class, where your specialities lie on more like the tech side of things and things like that.
Well, I do have a fairly technical mind, so the digital workflow, I like doing that. I know what Roger wants to see, so I'm working with them, setting up the daily flows, setting up the visual effects flow, that so they get what they want, figure out what the formats are, what the deliverables will be. For instance, are we delivering some IMAX? That's going to change what we keep safe. So I work all of that out in the beginning, and then during the shoot, I'm seeing it as well. And I also have a natural bent towards organization, and
yeah, you're part producer, aren't you? I mean, you know, scheduling equipment and everything else, you know, communicating between all the crew.
And I talk with production because Roger is operating when he's on set, and he's a little focused on set. So a lot of people don't want to interrupt him, but I can do it if I have to, because he can't yell at me. But no, you can't. And I also interact with the visual effects, because visual effects often they want to shoot maybe against blue screen or green screen, and the DP doesn't want to do that, and for various reasons, but there's always a compromise in there. And because I understand the technical end of it, I just ask what the elements are that they want, and you know, find a compromise between that, so there isn't that kind of conflict between the DP and the visual effects. And also we follow it through in the post. So when we're actually doing the DI, I'm talking with visual effects, and I know which shots are final, which are not final, because that's really important when you're doing a DI, because you're not going to spend time on the sky if you know that that sky replacement hasn't been done yet. So it's really in order to.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, in a digital world, you think the digital world would be simpler than a film world, but it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, everything has just got more and more complicated. Like James said, there's so many different deliverables. There's so many different post-production effects done on shots and stuff to keep an overall handle on all of it. It's kind of, yeah, it's a lot to do, really.
And one of the things is that when we're shooting, we're trying to shoot it the way that we want it. We're not fixing it in post. So we're trying to give the look in the dailies that it's going to have. So that also means we shoot it that way. And then I go to dailies with the dailies timer and just make sure that it translated that way. Because also when you're looking on set and you may be looking at a very calibrated monitor, but you're not necessarily in a dark tent or you're somewhere else, the density you may not be exactly what you want. So in the dailies, you're going to correct for that. But we are trying to basically have the editor who's going to be working with it for months and months and months have what it should look like. Because you can find in other films, if you give them something that's kind of blue and you say that's too blue, then they live with it for 9 months and they say, yeah, we'll correct that later. But then by the end of the 9 months, they really like that blue. That's what the scene is to them. So you do want to give them the way you want it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, a lot of these guys here, you know, like I say, started in film school. So I kind of in, you know, that early days and those first steps into going into the film world. So I think it'd be great to hear about like how you operate on different budgets, you know, from films like Batman thing all the way to Blade Runner and 1917, you know, and what's your process with working with them?
I don't, you know, yeah, different budgets, but it's funny. It doesn't matter how much money you've got; it's never enough. It's the ambition. You know, when you take a project, when you're working on a project, you know the kind of basic parameters of what you have budget-wise, what you can do, you know, and because it's based on the expectations of the director and the producer or the studio, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's very different working on something like a Sid and Nancy, where you're kind of shooting it handheld, and you know you're kind of shooting it partly like a documentary, you know. But obviously, you know, Blade Runner, the expectation was totally different, you know.
And what we found, and also what we found in talking with people, is it's almost a blessing at times not to have a whole lot of money, because with limitations comes inspiration. Mm-hmm. So if you feel that you're not that worried about budget and you can have whatever you want, you're not being forced to think about, okay, what is this scene and how can I get it across without a big crane, without this? So in a way, I think it works well for a movie not to have, you know, way too much money.
There's an enormous amount of indulgence in
Okay,
filmmaking,
okay,
especially in America. I mean, you know, you kind of watch the films that have come out this year, and look at Wim Wenders did a film called, what was it called?
Perfect Days.
Perfect Days.
Yeah.
They shot it in 13 days in Japan with like 5 people, probably 5 or 6 people.
One of our favorite films.
I mean, you know, go figure, you know.
Yeah, it's really awesome, like, also, you know, when you've got a smaller budget, a lot of the time you've got a smaller crew, you know, and so
Yeah.
your relationships that you build with the crew and the actors as well,
Yeah.
is in a total,
We saw an Australian film the other night, actually, called Limbo. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I don't know that it's come out yet.
No, it's only
Yeah.
coming out here in a week. It's quite brilliant, you know, and you just know it's not made with a lot of money, and they've used real locations and just sort of adapted things, and it's brilliant. I mean, you know, that's kind of, to me, that's real filmmaking.
Along that line, then, how much spontaneity do you like when you're filming? Do you like just figuring out things there as you're doing it, or how much do you pre-plan and work out through storyboards, shot lists, and things like that?
I like it. I like it anyway. I mean, so much of that's up to the director, the way the director wants to work, you know. But I mean, I do love prep. As Denis Villeneuve said one time, you know, it's the one time you got a chance to dream, because as soon as you start production, you're faced with all these kind of conundrums. You're basically, you know, putting out a fire most of the time when you're in production. You know, you don't have that much chance to
But
be that flexible, frankly.
the other thing too is prep is just a great way to go through it and figure out what's important in the set, in the script, what's important in each scene. And if you storyboard it, that's great, because you've thought about it and you think, okay, we really need that close-up of this object. But then when you get to set and the actor does it differently, and you have this brilliant idea, oh, what if we flip it around this way? It's okay, because you know what that scene's about, and you've already gone through that. So you have that kind of backing to be able to be spontaneous and still keep it within, you know, the story.
Yeah, absolutely. But I felt so. I mean, part of the joy of the job for me has been over the years is that every film is different, you know. So you go into a film like, you know, Jarhead, the first film I did with Sam, you know, and it's totally handheld, and you're kind of creating it as you're going along. You're shooting a rehearsal basically, and finding it with the actors in that situation. So, you know, can vary considerably from that to something with Joel and Ethan Cohen, where storyboarded, everything is storyboarded, but it's still, you're still open to sort of chance on the day. So, you know, I love the variety of approaches, really.
And I mean, there is an approach that some directors take where they storyboard and then they have to stick to the storyboard.
Yeah.
That I think is not so good.
Yeah, I find that can be a bit stultifying, but I mean, you know, that's just the way the director works, you know, and, you know, I've only been on one film like that. I mean, I think it was quite a good film. It's the way that director works, fine, but yeah, I kind of think that's hard on the actors, let alone anybody else. You know, if the actors can't can bring something in terms of the blocking and their own personality to the character they're creating. Now, you know, then it's just like, I don't know, it's like a coloring book, isn't it? I don't find that exciting, really.
You know, I just want to skip back to when you were talking about working with smaller crews. There's an advantage to that too. Maybe everybody has to do a little bit more, but everybody feels more a part of it. And I think that's really important. If you're running a crew, you need them to feel engaged in it. And if you collaborate with them, as opposed to just tell them what to do, but if you say, this is what I'm thinking of doing, what do you think? If they, whether their ideas are followed or not, if they feel like they're a part of it, you're gonna get a lot more out of them,
Yeah.
but it's also gonna be a more pleasant experience across the board. So
Yeah,
I'd rather work with a smaller crew of engaged people than a really big crew where you have to figure out who am I supposed to talk to?
well, it's also something lovely about a lower budget film where you know people are there because
They
they
wanna
want to
be,
be there.
yeah.
It's not like they could go somewhere else and make more money.
Yeah.
They want to be there because of,
Yeah,
you know, because of everybody,
Yeah.
because of the project, you know.
yeah. They're not getting a new car out of
Yeah,
it.
that, you know, that's kind of nice, really. But you know, every project's different, and that's what's been really nice.
Sorry, I had to flip back, but
No, that's okay. Roger, you mentioned before Sam Mendes and the Coen brothers, and I think something that everyone thinks about is you've worked a lot with collaborators like that, Denis Villeneuve as well. What attracts you to certain creative voices? Is it the way they look at projects? What attracts you to certain people within?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can, yeah, James just said it was a collaboration, but it's also, you know, you can give a script to half a dozen people and they'll all have a different take on it, you know, and it's yeah, you want to feel that you're in sync with the director in terms of a kind of point of view, really. Yeah, I mean, it's important to us. I mean, the script is important. That's why we haven't been working for a while. The script is important, and also the director's important. The director's take on that script, and you know, the first time we worked with Denis on Prisoner, that script could have
gone
in the
anyway.
wrong hands. That could have been a gothic horror film, you know. But just seeing Denis' work and knowing what his take would be on it, and talking to him before we took the job, frankly. You know, it's just we were very much in sync. It was quite exciting. His way of dealing with something, as I say, that could have been a standard sort of gothic horror film, really.
And I think one of the first things when you're deciding whether to take a film or not is meet with the director and see if you're in sync with their vision, because if they're seeing it as a comedy and you're seeing it as something quite sad, and it can easily happen. It's good to know that right away, because otherwise you'll be working along and wondering why he keeps making these decisions. So you want to be in sync with the director, and you want to, I think also when you're working with a director, it's like a roommate situation. You've got to figure whether you can live 6 months with this person, and whether there is a form of communication between you, because you know, some people you're just different than, and it's nothing, you know, wrong about them. It's just that you know that you guys communicate in a different way. And well, with me, like I'm always insulting them and not meaning to, because I'm straightforward. Well, there are some people that would see that. Okay. Next question.
Moving on.
I wanted to ask about, you know, since we're talking about, you know, working with a director for the first time or something like that, maybe like, what are your first steps when you've, you know, finally come onto a project? You know, they've brought a script forward, a director forward, you've decided, yeah, I think I'm going to gel with this and I want to work on it. What's the first thing that you do?
Well, I mean, usually you have time. I mean, usually I have time with a director sitting in an office just talking through the script, you know, trying to visualize it. And then you spend time looking at locations and talking with a production designer and figuring out, you know, what's the location, what's the set, and the whole thing just gradually builds. There's not one meeting where you kind of like, okay, this is what it's going to be. The whole thing just gradually builds, you know, and yeah, right up to the day of the shoot, and suddenly somebody can have an idea and completely turn the scene on its head, you know, on the day. And that's what's sort of great about it, you know, that whole collaboration, really, exploration of a script, really.
And there's so many things in the beginning that you have to figure out. I mean, aspect ratio, what's the aspect ratio going to be? And, you know, talking with the director about what the story is helps you determine what the aspect ratio is.
Yeah.
Is there going to be, are there going to be throne shots? Are there going to be, you know, all of this starts to come when you start talking about what the scenes mean and then how are you going to portray them? So all of this information starts to trickle through, and then we got to figure out, you know, equipment and all that. For instance, on 1917, it said it was all one shot. At first, we didn't believe it, and then it was. But then Roger and Sam talked about it as if it was a normal film. Who do you want to be on? And then once we knew where the shots needed to be, then the production designer knew how to build the sets, and we knew that we had to figure out how to do it. We had to figure out what equipment would work. So all of this sort of starts to trickle down, and you hope that it all comes to you before you have to start shooting.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, I like prep. I like having a long prep because it's exactly that. It's getting to the director's head and getting on the same page and working through things together. I mean, that's the joy of it, really.
It's also seeing what the problems are going to be.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Awesome. So the other thing that strikes me is that you've never been afraid of modern technology. I remember back to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
You should have watched you should have watched the AI thing I was watching just now.
Oh, God.
That
You
scares
just
me.
got it right after.
That's terrifying.
Moving on. Come on.
But yeah, so with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou being one of the first going through the digital intermediate process, coming off of film, and then on 1917 prototyping the mini LF. What is your philosophy around approaching technology like that? Because you seem open-minded about things like that.
Well, it's the technology that's going to help the film, you know.
It's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. I mean, the first thing I did that was out of the box was 1984, which was one of the early features I did with Mike Radford. And we wanted to shoot in black and white, but basically we couldn't, the studio or the backers wouldn't allow us to do that. So, you know, we developed, or the lab, with the lab, we developed the bleach bypass process. Basically, it was the first major European film that used that process, you know. So it's really, the film is kind of like asking you these questions. It's like, how do you do this? The film wants to be a certain way, like on 1917, it wants to be a single shot, but you don't want the technology to drive the shot. So as James said, Sam and I talked about what is the shot? What do we want to show the audience? Where do we want the camera to be? You know, and then we work out, okay, how do we do it? So that's really been my process all the way along. The same with Oh Brother, you know, we tried to do it photochemically, and then it was Joel said, you know, that there is this process they were using on Pleasantville, which, you know, was basically digitizing the negative and altering it in a digital format and then recording it back on a film. Seems very antiquated now, doesn't it? But yeah, that was very, very early technology, but we needed it to visualize the film. So it's kind of interesting. I say that the projects are driving.
I'm sorry. People
That's
want
good.
to talk to me.
It's terrible.
Keep going.
It's no, just because I mean, the projects are driving the technology. It's not the technology is there. Oh, let's use it. You know.
Yeah. No, sorry, I just want to jump in a bit off topic. We watched 1984 as a class just the other week.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to, just the location of where you shot the hillsides with the trees. Where was that? Because it was so like.
That was Salisbury Plain, actually, where we shot most of 1917.
What is
Really?
It's I'm from South Devon, and to get to London, when I was living in London, I would drive across Salisbury Plain because it's in, you know, halfway between where I was brought up and where I was living in London. So yeah, it came into my head when we shot 1984, and then it came back when we shot 1917. I said, well, we must go down there. That's where we should shoot, you know.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic show. I love that one.
Well, you were also, Michael, when we were watching it, the news broadcasts that were always happening, we were fascinated with how that was done, because
Well, you
it
can't
looks like it's
VFX
there.
it.
It doesn't look like VFX.
Yeah.
No, it's not. There was
Yeah.
there was no visual effects in the film at all. Nothing.
was-
Everything's in camera.
Way back, almost before the invention of the camera.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, Ridley Scott did a commercial that was kind of like 1984, and he did use CG to put in the screens, and it was an Apple commercial, I think. But no, we did everything in camera. Mike was kind of quite keen that we did it. At first, it was like, let's see what we can do in camera. Then we managed to figure out everything but the big hate rally in Victory Square, because the screens were so big. It was like, oh, how the hell are we going to do that? And there was a special effects supervisor, I mean, a projectionist, basically, who'd worked on just about every British movie you'd seen in the past. And he helped us actually develop a special reflective screen and get enough light to be able to shoot it in camera. So yeah, everything's done in camera, including a glass shot, which you probably no idea what a glass shot is, but where you put a piece of glass at 45 degrees in front of the lens and then reflect in an image on top of the one that's directly in front of you. So we kind of did everything.
It was, like, I can remember, we were watching the film and I just saw the screen and I was just like, now how the hell did they do that?
Well, some of them are pretty bad quality because, you couldn't keep the light off them, so there's more reflection on the screen than the brightness of it. Anyway, it was a struggle, but yeah, we basically did it all in camera.
Fantastic.
So obviously that's a pretty massive film and complicated film to do early on. What project was one of the biggest learning curves for both of you in your careers?
They all have a certain learning curve to them.
Yeah, everything does.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my biggest learning curve was shooting documentaries, really. I don't think it was shooting features. I think, I think shooting documentaries, it's like, if you come back with something, then that gives you a lot of confidence sometimes, situation you're in.
I think 1917 was a huge learning curve on stabilization.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
equipment.
Yeah.
We didn't know that.
Yeah, there was stuff. There's stuff we were kind of learning, and some of it was, some of people were inventing for us. So yeah, I mean, every film offers, different challenge, really. Yeah, but it's a gradual process, building up the confidence and yeah, I mean, when I was at film school, there was this quite well known, very respected cinematographer said that to us as students, he said, well, you won't be able to work professionally till you've actually overcome every possible situation that you'll face. And I thought, well, how the hell does that make sense? Because there's no way you're ever going to do that, because every day you face a new situation. So really, it's I felt like at film school, it was just, I had to build enough confidence in myself, do enough different things that I felt I could find a way of making something work professionally, even if I didn't, know that technology or hadn't been in that situation previously,
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, in 1917, you say you learned a lot about stabilization, with the whole like Trinity and everything that was going on. But you're also a lot more hands off, and you weren't operating as often in that film, right? Did you, while producing the Trinity, did you don the gear and run around the sets?
No, I didn't do that. I mean, that really is a specialist operation. I mean, I don't know anybody else other than Charlie, who worked for us, who can work with it that well. And the same, Pete Cavacuti, who's doing Steadicam and figuring ways of running down that trench very fast. It wasn't a Steadicam, it was his own adaptation of a piece of equipment.
But also, we worked a lot with the Stable-Eye, and that's a remote head.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, most of the film is probably on a remote head, so I was operating, but remotely.
And we had a system set up where we had to be in tents fairly far away if we could hide, or a place that it would be easy to remove us later. And I would be on headsets with the guys on the camera, because where they're at is important for Roger to be able to get that shot. You know, if he wanted to pan over or whatever, so I was always on the headset with him going, oh, yeah, a little to the left, a little to the right.
I
Yeah.
guess it was a bit like shooting sports, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. No,
Pressure, yeah.
the thing is, actually,
Feeling.
no, sorry, the thing is, every shot in that film was pre-rehearsed. You
Yeah,
know, with the specific piece of equipment we thought we would use for it, and we only actually changed the equipment, I think, on 2 occasions because it didn't actually work out in the real situation. We had to change our equipment, but most of it was thoroughly rehearsed beforehand. So when we were on set with the actors and actually in the real situation, with the explosions going off and everything else, it was quite easy. It's actually because we'd been through it so many times, you know.
yeah, it's the only film that I've ever worked on. It started April 1st, and in November we started having production meetings, and because we had all these schematics where the camera was and everything. And we had prop people there and makeup people there and hair people and costume. And usually you don't see them until, you know, closer to the actual shoot. So that also made it great because the prop person could say, well, that's a great shot, but I'm going to have a problem with this prop or whatever. And so we would be able to discuss all these things ahead of time and maybe make changes. So by the time we went on set, it was actually a little boring because we knew what it was going to be.
No, it was great collaboration, you know.
Yeah,
because,
With color grading now, I'm really interested in how involved you are in post-production. I know Jamie said you work a lot with the VFX and timing VFX. Color, you can kind of almost change it. So how involved are you making sure that it's the way you want it to look when it comes to that stage?
Sit in the DI suite and I do every shot.
And it's also, I talk at the point that we're doing a contract, I do talk with the studio because we want to be involved in the visual effects. We want to be able to screen. And usually anyway, by that time, the director would like us to be on it. And it's one of those things where you don't get paid for it, but it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And I mean, 1917 or Skyfall, Blade Runner, you know, the directors asked for us to be involved in the effects. So we get sent them. Maybe we just get sent them over the internet just to make a comment on why we don't feel it's working or whatever. And but when it comes to the DI suite, we're there every day. You know,
It is actually very important, though. I'm sorry, I'm going back to this whole thing of viewing visual effects, because if you don't see them until they get into the DI, then you're already behind schedule, because that always happens, and you're going to want to fight to get it changed properly. There's a bad matte line, there's something wrong with it. And that's what I always say to them. It's going to save you money if you have someone like Roger looking at it during the process, because in the middle of the process, when they're still working on it, you could say, oh, listen, that's not working because this is overlapping that or whatever. And so it saves them money if they catch it beforehand, because I always say to them, we'll kick it back, I promise you, and you don't want that. So
well, I do think it's a shame that you hear a lot of cinematographers don't actually have control over their work, you know, not in the DI suite even, you know, maybe the editors in there doing it, but no, that's
and
we've always done that from the early days, even to the point of having kind of a remote facility when we've been shooting a film somewhere, like we're in Connecticut and we needed to be doing the DI on Jesse James, and we had a facility where we could work in the evenings, you know.
And it also depends on the digital house that you're working with, because some digital houses are more friendly towards DPs because they're visual and they know that the DP's the visual guy. And then other houses might be more studio director focused. And so they might not give you a call and say, by the way, they're timing it and they haven't told you that. But
it's very funny, all that, isn't it? Because there's actually some color timers say, well, I found the color for the scene in the DI suite, or we lit this, so I made this, you know, and you think, well, what are they doing? You know, what's the cinematographer feel about that? Or what is
Yeah.
the cinematographer doing on set? I mean,
Mhm.
maybe now you can, yeah, let's not go into AI.
Yeah,
But, you know.
stop.
No, but I think, you know, I think the director needs a cinematographer actually to be there and see the process all the way through. Otherwise, it can get, you know, it can get watered down. The original intent can be it can go off in so many different directions.
So do you find when you're in that suite, is it most of the time trying to get that original intent, the look that you came up with on set, or do you ever also have a moment where you're like, oh, I would actually like to change this thing that I can change that I didn't do on set?
No, I mean, you know, maybe there might be a wall that's too brightly green or something, but I mean, very little. I mean, we don't spend, I mean, apart from a film like Oh Brother, we don't spend much time in a DI.
Yeah, and it's basically balancing, because when you're shooting, you don't know what the scene before or after, or the shot before or after is going to be. And if the scene before is very blue or very yellow, it's going to affect what comes afterwards. So it's balancing it.
Well, I think you do know, but yeah, when you see it in
You
the
don't
final
always know,
cut,
Raj.
you
do
don't
not
know it.
always
The
know.
edit might be shifted or whatever,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So things have to be balanced, but
And
I
you
don't think we
also,
ever change the actual concept, do we?
no, we don't change the concept, but when they're butted together,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're on
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
day shooting a blue scene and you don't realize what it's coming after or something. So yeah.
If the edit is shifted from the way you show it, yeah.
I was gonna say, you talk about lighting a lot as well, and lighting, of course, is a massive part. I always remember hearing like an old adage of like, for every light you add to a scene, you're adding 2 more problems to solve. I saw you made a 6-story lighting rig for 1917. Was that a little problem?
It was only 5. You exaggerate.
Okay, so it was easy.
Well, that's because it was near Heathrow, so it could have been 6, but they wouldn't let
They
them.
wouldn't let me go that high.
Oh damn. And so I guess that brings us to the, you know, lighting the space versus lighting the shot, you know, and kind of like after you have lit the space for the scene to play in, how long do you then spend, you know, just making those minor tweaks to make sure that every shot is exactly how you want it?
Well, I mean, that really depends, you know, it depends on the scene and the way the shoot, you know, the coverage of the scene, the angles. You know, I mean, yeah, I light a space, but I kind of know, even if it's not storyboarded, I have an idea of what the coverage is going to be. So I'm lighting the space with that in mind. You know, I mean, the 1917, the burning church and that great big lighting rig. Well, yeah, that was a concept because I had to light basically in 360 degrees. So that's a specific situation.
It was also a movie that didn't have a lot of other lighting, so.
No, I mean, yeah, but I mean, any space, you're lighting it with the shooting in mind, you know. So it depends. I mean, sometimes, yeah, sometimes if I don't like the way a shot looks and it's dramatically, I don't know. I'm trying to find a situation. I can't really think of a situation. I mean, I don't really spend much time from shot to shot. I mean, maybe the director would say I spend too much time, but they always want to shoot straight away. But I don't spend that much time from shot to shot. But I do light for close-ups. I do add or subtract light for close-ups. I do adjust it. But yes, but I do like lighting a space. I like the feel of, if it's a daylit scene, I like the feel of the daylight and how that's going to affect the angles, the coverage on the scene. I like to choose the certain practical lights that are going to be in the set. If they're going to be on, they're very important because they're going to affect the way the scene feels. And I'm quite meticulous about a set and actually practical lights and the way the basic lighting setup is done. You know, we'll draw diagrams, very detailed diagrams, right down to exactly how many lights and exactly where they're facing, you know. yeah, but I will work on the set with a few lights to adjust between shots. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you had a question about, you mentioned that you don't spend much time going from shot to shot. So is that all that time is just spent in the setup beforehand, and then you're able to do your next setup really quick?
Yeah, I mean, it's in theory, yeah, you're lighting the scene, and yeah, and then the shots within it are kind of basically lit by the way you've lit the scene, or the location or the set, whatever it is.
Which is also
Yeah.
helpful for when you're shooting a scene and the director doesn't want to pause all the time because
Yeah,
the actors are
exactly,
getting
yeah.
into it. So it's really helpful if you're able to go from setup to setup without a long wait in between.
Yeah, I mean, lighting is not what it used to be. I mean, lighting is not used to it. I mean, because actors don't often actually go to marks like they used to.
Oh.
You know, I think the last time Andy, a focus pull I worked with, the last time you put marks on the floor was probably about 20 odd years ago. You know, I mean, you're not doing it like film noir of the 40s or 50s, you know, where the actor has to hit the light just exactly where it catches the eye or whatever. Films have changed. You know, in certain situations, yeah, you just light a set and that's it. Shoot everything and you shoot 360 degrees, and that's the situation. But when working for a director like John and Ethan Cohen, working with them, yes, it's very specific shots, and I'll adjust the lighting from shot to shot. But yeah, the situations vary completely.
One of the shots and lighting setups that blew my mind, which we watched last week in class, we were watching No Country for Old Men, and it's when Josh Brolin comes back to the scene of the crime at nighttime,
Yeah,
and the hills in the background, I can see them, and I'm like,
yeah.
how did that work?
I didn't have enough light though. I wanted 3 Musco lights. You know what Musco lights are? They're a big stadium they used in football stadiums, but
Oh, okay, yeah.
they're on a truck at 100 foot high, and it's like 96 par 6Ks. I wanted 3 of them, but I could only get 2 of them. So yeah, that scene frustrates me really, because I don't feel it's evenly lit enough to be real moonlight, and I was shooting absolutely wide open, so it's not quite as crisp as I'd have liked. But yeah, that was a challenge.
Well, it was also
It blew our minds. We were
Yeah.
watching it. We had a discussion after class what it must have taken to light that.
a lot
Yeah,
of
we-
organization too.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
organization, and then, you know, again, we managed to get 2 Musco lights, but we had to schedule the scene out around the availability of the lights and all that sort of stuff. You know, yeah, it was a bit of a bother.
Did you take learning from that? After that, we watched True Grit, and then True Grit also has this night scene in an open field, and again, I can see the whole field.
Yeah, but the difference was in No Country, we had this one place to put a lamp, and I thought about doing something similar to what I did in True Grit later on. But if I'd have done that, there would have been too much equipment in this place to get in and take out, and it would have screwed with our schedule. So, and then I thought, well, it could be moonlight. I don't have a problem with a hard shadow, and I actually think it's better for being a hard shadow. But in True Grit, the whole scene takes place. It actually snows at the end of the sequence. After they come out the hut, it's snowing. So I couldn't really justify it being moonlight. And if it had been a single source, I wouldn't have been able to cover the actors down below shot to shot. It just wouldn't have looked very good. So for many reasons, I did a very, very long row of, I think it was 12Ks. It was like, I think in total I had over like, I don't know. I was 100-foot line of 12Ks. The longest line was 100-foot line, and they were 12Ks 5 feet spaced apart. So it was quite a few lamps. But then I did the same thing on the other side of the hill, because if you watch the film, on one scene, you're one side of the line between the characters, And then the latter scene, you're the other side of the line. So I didn't want one to be front lit and the other to be backlit. So the way I spaced it, I could do it so each set of lights, I could just flick a switch, go from one scene to another, and the light would kind of wrap around the faces. So I actually could shoot that without doing much on the floor. In fact, I don't think I did anything on the floor. I just shot everything with that one big, very big lighting setup, you know.
Yeah, we pointed that out. We were thinking, wait, they're backlit here, but they're backlit here, but they're both. And so I was thinking maybe you were cheating the angles with it, you know. But hearing that you just went, you know, two separate lines and shot each other, that's fantastic.
Just a flick of a switch, you know, because we had very little time to shoot all that as well. So, you know, and night shoots are expensive and all the rest of it. So Chris Napolitano and I, the gaffer, we worked out how we would have them all in, you know, sequences, and we could do it all at a flick of a switch.
Wow.
Awesome. I guess this brings us to like, you know, I'd like to hear your thoughts on like, you know, studio versus location filming. You know, being in a place. I think a lot of films nowadays are probably using the blue screen a wee bit too much. However, apart from, you know, your blue screen and your VFX stuff, but actually building a location in a studio and having your set, you know, made versus going to a place where you're going to be using kind of what's originally there and changing it uniquely. What do you prefer?
I don't think it's a matter of so much of preference. I don't really have a preference. There's good things or bad about each. But I mean, it's really about the situation. I mean, I was just thinking of a scene in Hail Caesar, which is there's a scene in a Malibu house, and there's a day scene in the house, long day scene, and there's a night scene inside the house. Now, to do that in location and find a location that suited, that had the view out to the ocean, that you could get to, that didn't have other houses surrounding it, that you could have taken over for a few weeks and made it your own, and then accessed it with a crew and with all the trucks you have, etc., etc. No way were we going to shoot that on location. You just weren't going to do it. So, you know, did I like shooting it on a set? I did, other than the fact that I was shooting with green screen against green screen. I mean, I would have preferred it if we could have done translights and stuff, but then we couldn't because the view was so much there, it had to be alive. So, you know, nowadays probably somebody would shoot that against an LED wall, you know, a big LED screen. But I'm not sure I'm kind of in love with that technology myself. So yeah, so it's really, you kind of have to balance all the pros and cons. I mean, the little shack in the scene in True Grit that you talk about, the shack is a set, but that way we could shoot on stage and it was then weather cover for something else. You know what I mean? So all the thing, it's like a whole jigsaw puzzle about, you know, to say whether I prefer shooting one way or the other. It's not. It's about the situation within the whole schedule.
The one thing also, though, about sets is they tend to have something that's movable wall-wise, and you don't find that in locations. And so I like it that way because I think it's, I mean, that's what I like about sets is that it's a little bit easier that way and more
craft
services.
There's a lot
usually closer to production office too.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, just practicalities usually govern a lot of those sort of things, you know. I mean, if I had my druthers, you know, I would go and shoot everything on location. I'd shoot it handheld and I'd be working with 5 people. And it'd probably be in black and white too, actually. You know.
It sounds like you don't like to stick to like the binary. It's either one way or another. It sounds really good that you've got like always a practical, you know, sometimes the schedule is what dictates it. And that's something really good, especially for some of these students to hear, especially when you see interviews with other filmmakers where they'll say, I'll only shoot on film stock for the rest of my life. So it's really nice.
I just find that I'd shoot on anything you want, really. It's about the story. I really, you know, and it's about the story and practicalities, you know. If you haven't got the money, shoot on an iPhone. No.
Yeah, because if you look at it, there are some movies out there that technically are just awful. I mean, they're really badly done, but the story is so strong that it's a great movie. But then you can see other movies that are technically perfect, but there's no story, and I'd
Yeah.
rather have the other one.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
From the tech side of things, at the end of Sicario, using actual infrared and night vision, was that a process for you, James, to be able to figure out how to get that to work, or
Well,
how did you solve that?
we had to figure out, the different cameras and the heat sensitive camera. I did some research, and they had done it on, what rock video was it?
I forget now. So
Yeah.
rock video they'd use this. It was a company called FLIR.
Yeah,
And
and
they had a camera that would actually fit. You could fit our lenses on it, so it
Yeah.
was really good. It was really high resolution. It was actually a science camera, you know, but they'd used it on some
because
rock and roll video.
It
That's
was
where we got
hard to
across it.
find a camera that they were willing to give to a film, because
Yeah.
they were using it medically and all that. But they had used this for rock video. I talked to them, and they said, if you put our logo at the end, that's fine.
Yeah.
So we did get it. Our biggest problem was the schedule changed, and so we were shooting on a different day, which they didn't understand, because you said. But
they were really great, actually.
Yeah.
It was a camera as well that could fit on the Steadicam, which
Yeah.
so all these things had to kind of work out. You know?
Yeah. And also, Denis really wanted the viewer to be able to see who Benicio was, because that's his point of view, and then everybody else has the
Night vision.
right? And it was really funny shooting that scene, because there wasn't any light, because there wouldn't be any light, but the poor actors had props on, so they had no
They
ability to
couldn't see
see anything. So they were stuck around. It was
That's
funny.
good to know. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Was that can bring a lot of issues. So did you test that in pre-production or something like that, or was that the day?
We got the camera in for a couple of days in order to test it. Then we had to send it back, and then they sent it to us again. But we did that on that stage, and we heated up somebody's shoe to leave a footprint.
Yeah, that was good. We tested it.
Yeah, it's fun to test.
Also, part of that sequence is that beautiful sunset shot, seemingly. And you do that again. Watching a lot of your films, you have the most beautiful golden hour shots. How much prep goes into that? Because obviously that's a period that only lasts
Very
half
short.
an hour. Nice.
Yeah, we'd laid the track beforehand. I'd scouted that location, talked to Denny about it. I'd taken a Polaroid probably or something. I'd taken on my iPhone, and set it up beforehand. We were actually shooting in the stage, which was only like half a mile away from that piece of headland where we shot that. And we just came out one evening, and actually we're there 2 evenings, but that was one of them,
that shot.
We shot the bulk of the sequence on one evening, and then we had to go back and do some closer pickups on the second evening. But it was all worked out. The track was laid way in advance, and I sort of rehearsed it, say on my iPhone with a couple of stand-ins, so could show Denny what the shot would be,
And also, on Sicario, wasn't the fact that the skies were so incredibly expressive that they ended up being a character? It wasn't something that was planned on.
No, that wasn't. No.
Yeah, because you didn't think that you'd want that kind of sky, but then the skies are great in Sicario.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
I always assumed that you just had a dial in your back pocket where you could just make the sun go back and up and down.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Yeah. No, yeah. Well, I won't say it.
He does.
I read a review of it that said, God said, let there be light, and then Roger said, wait for my cue.
Sounds like you.
It's a lot of the fun of it, though, I mean, it's like, the fun of it is working it out and kind of like wandering around locations and looking at that light and stuff. I mean, that whole sequence in No Country for Old Men when Josh is running to the river and the dog chases him. I mean, I've walked that river, you know, mornings and evenings many, many times just to look at the light and figure what time of day I wanted to shoot each angle, you know. I mean, but that's the fun of it, you know.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think
More that you want to do before we throw to the class?
yeah, we'll throw some questions to the class very shortly. I have one technical question. You know, I guess I've got two, but I'll wrap them into one. But it's more like a lines of, has a director ever come to you with a specific like piece of equipment, like that, let's say a lens or something like that, where they say this is end all be all, or do they always come to you saying, I'm thinking this, what's your thoughts, you know?
Yeah, the latter, but I mean, you know, you kind of choose who you work with, really. I mean, you know, and I've had unhappy experiences, I'll say that right now, and I've not finished movies on a couple of occasions for various reasons. But I mean, you know, it's for me, it's about collaboration. And I mean, there is a wonderful, talented director who I know tells the cameraman where the camera goes and what lens every shot's going to be on. And I'm not really, that's fine, go ahead. But then, so why do I want to be there? You know, if I can help somebody and collaborate with somebody, that's great. But if I can't, no, I'm fine. I'll go fishing. You know what I mean? I don't. Yeah, I mean, you have to find some satisfaction in what you do. It's too damn stressful if you don't.
Yeah. And is there one lens that you just love? Like, you know, if in doubt, I'll go to this one.
No, not really. No, I mean, I not really. No, I mean, my lens range is fairly standard. You know, I don't play around with a lot of different lenses, really.
Cool. I think we'll throw some questions to the class now because we've just reached the hour mark.
Yeah.
I just got to turn the microphone up so you can hear them.
So we'll go start with Jeff.
No, GC, stand up.
How you?
Hey.
When you're like pressured for time, what are some of the first compromises that you choose to make? Yeah.
That's a good question.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know the answer really, because it depends on the situation. But I mean, look, let's face it, as soon as you pick up a camera, it's a compromise. Everything you do is a compromise in one way or another. It's bound to be, you know. You can say, like we were just talking about the sunset shot. Yeah, okay, it might look lovely, but it doesn't match the one that came before it. But nobody's ever told me that, but I know it because they were shot on 2 different evenings. So everything you do is a compromise. But you know, most of the time you're solving problems and finding ways to make something work within the time frame that you're allowed.
But also, when you say sometimes a compromise is to not do the kind of cool shot that was going to introduce the scene or whatever, because you've got to get the bulk of the scene if you're running out of time. There are those kind of compromises.
I think that's the benefit of doing a lot of prep and thinking about it, because like, you know, with Joel and Ethan, everything's so laid out. But then you kind of, you've got in the back of your head, well, maybe you don't need that shot, or maybe the scene could play on this 2 shot and you don't need the coverage. You know, that happened quite a lot with Denis. We would find a shot that worked and say, well, we don't need to go in for coverage. So, you know, but it varies situation to situation. I mean, obviously, a lot of the time you're compromising lighting because you just don't have time to finesse it or something. You know, sun's going down, you got to grab a shot, you might shoot it handheld when you wanted to be on a dolly, but you just haven't got the time.
And unfortunately, when we first see the final cut and when the movie comes out, we always don't like it because all we see is compromises. Oh, we didn't get that shot. Oh, we didn't get to do this. Oh, why didn't we go overhead? And it takes us about 5 years, and then maybe we'll see it on the telly and go, huh,
I wasn't so bad.
yeah, that movie's not
No,
so bad.
so you have to be prepared to compromise, but that doesn't make it
Palatable.
easy.
Cool. Anyone else? Cool, we got Lucas in the back, you want to stand up and ask a question?
Hi, so when you guys are starting a new project, is there something that you specifically look for that yes, this is the project that I will be working on next?
Yeah, script, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, you like some novelist, you read some novels, you know, I'd only work on something that I know I'd go and see in a cinema and pay money for, and something that kind of moves me in some way, you know, don't you think?
Yeah, it needs to touch you, because you're going to be going through months and months of this, and there will be some times that aren't so good. But if you believe in the script, it makes it a lot better, because you go, oh, okay, but this is going to be great. This is going to be great. And yeah, it is definitely that the script does something, says something. You feel like there is a reason for having seen that movie. You got something out of it.
Who else had their hand up before as well? We'll go with Caleb, yeah?
Hi there, nice to meet you guys. So I just have a quick question. So when you have any new individuals who come on a set, they're starting fresh, such as most of us, what are the small little things that really stand out for you that you know will lead to success in the future?
There's a certain sort of etiquette on set, really. You know, there's a certain, well, I don't know, everybody's set is different, really, I suppose. But I mean, we like sets that are really quiet and really focused. And yeah, I think that just to be attentive really is the most important thing.
To be
Being respectful of yeah.
To be attentive and to sort of blend in, so you're there to help, and not sort of making a big deal of everything that you're doing.
I think people kind of people don't really take enough notice of the fact that cinematographer and the camera crew, I mean, one of the most important aspects of their work is to create a space for the actors to work in, that the actors feel comfortable in. So when I'm saying to be respectful of the set, it's that's what I'm talking about, really. I mean, some actors, they don't want to know you're there, but other actors do like to be part of the process and actually like to talk to you, maybe even between setups. So it's kind of being aware of that a set is really about those human relationships, and when it comes down to importance, it's really what the actors want more than anything else, because if you don't have a performance, you don't have anything.
And I think another side too is every time we have someone new in our department, I talk with them, and if we need something, and usually production will go, no, it's not in the budget, you still have to fight for it, but you have to go in with sort of a positive attitude, not an antagonistic attitude, because you get a lot more that way. And a film set, if you come out, you know, shooting your guns right away, you've got a long process to, you know, to stay yet to the end. So it's better to like keep calm.
Nice yourself.
Yeah, get what you need, but try and, you know, keep some sort of decency about it, because some people do go in and just, you know, posture, I guess.
Wheatley, I saw your hand up before as well.
Yeah. Hi guys. What was your most challenging shot to shoot?
Oh dear.
Well, 1917 was one shot, so that was quite challenging. I don't know, you know, like every shot's challenging. It's in its own way, you know. I mean, you could say, yeah, a shot is hard to get. The shot we were talking about earlier, it's a sunset. You've got 20 minutes to do it, or you want the extras to walk in a certain way, and it's all got to be timed with a dolly, whatever. Is that hard? Yeah, but then, you know, sometimes it's hard just shooting a very simple, tight little close-up.
Well, sometimes too, the difficult part of the shot is trying to figure out how to do it. So it's kind of happens in prep, like Unbroken and the plane. We had to figure out how that was going to work. And for a long time, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the worst days on it. But then because we worked so hard on it.
Yeah, but that, yeah, I mean, that wasn't shot so much as, so yeah, it was a scene, but it's, you know, I mean, it's funny when you pick up a script and read it, and certainly 1970 was that, like, because it said on the first page, this is one shot in real time. I mean, but any script, you pick it up and go, well, how the hell are we going to do that? But it's that whole process of collaboration, of talking it through with the directors, of scouting, and just kind of gradually working your way towards being on the set and shooting the shot. So really, yeah, I mean, it's just all about process. I can't think of one shot that I could just say, oh, that shot was really difficult. It stands out from any other, you know.
Alex, this will end up as well.
Honored to be able to ask you this question. What is something you wish you'd learned earlier on than you did?
I wish I'd learned to have a bit more confidence in myself. I wish I'd have learned that a long time ago. But what do you think?
Well, that's true. I wish I had learned this too shall pass. You know, yeah, I think as you go along, you start realizing, you start getting a lot calmer about it, and it makes it a lot easier.
I tell you there's one thing I've learned is that one thing will never go away, and you think you would learn, the more you learn, it would go away. But I never lose the fact I'm very stressed out and nervous on a set, especially at the beginning of a film, but every day, you know. And I think that's part of who I am, and that's part of what comes with the job. So I wish I'd known that. I was thinking that was a bad thing, that I had to get rid of it. But it was only like, it's only been in the last few years, really, that I felt to embrace it, because that's who I am. And I think it's just part of, yeah, if you care about something, you're going to get stressed out.
It makes sense, because a lot of people that we've talked to that are incredibly good at what they do, they also get incredibly nervous. Connie Hall told us that on the first week on a new set, he'd be so nervous that he would put his eye to the camera, not because he needed to, but he just wanted to be left alone for a little while to think, you know. So it's not a bad thing.
Just stand up if you've got one. Any back of the class or, yeah.
Are we all to?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll stand on the stool. Hello, I'm there. Amy, I currently work at an animation studio. Well, I'm Skyping off work at the moment, but I noticed that you were the cinematographer for Rango, which I could imagine would be quite a different experience to live action. So I'm wondering, what was that experience like, and would you be interested in cinematography for animation again?
We've done many animation, actually, many animation projects.
Yeah, we actually started on Wall-E. That was the first project that we were involved on, and then we did the How to Train Your Dragon series and a number of films at DreamWorks. But Rango, yeah, was really interesting experience. I mean, Gore Verbinski is kind of amazing. and that he basically laid out the whole film storyboard wise. So he wanted our involvement because he wanted somebody to oversee the lighting, basically. So we worked with ILM and stayed in connection with them because the project took over a year to render and light. So we were working on True Grit, weren't we, at the time, for some of that period, but we would get sent stuff over the internet and just keeping connected, and it was a great experience, you know. But in the end, it's the same, you know. You're telling a story visually. The thing about on Wall-E, Andrew Stanton brought us in because he wanted it to feel filmic, didn't he?
Right.
So it's the same process. It's using light and the camera and camera movement and cutting to tell a story.
I think the biggest shock to us is that camera was divided between layout and lighting. And so for us in the beginning, we kept saying, you guys should talk to each other more. You really should.
Yeah,
Because
funny.
it's odd to us.
Somebody coming from live action when I operate and light. So it was like to split it up. I didn't really, yeah.
Awesome, Luke.
Hi, I'm not going to try and bounce on anything, but you mentioned earlier about projects that you've kind of walked away from, and I was wondering, when it comes to projects that you're like really invested in, when you get to that point where you have differences with either production or creative direction, do you have a process for working through those, like, you know, those kind of clashes, making those decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think on any film, if you're passionate in what you believe, you know, you come into conflict. I mean, there's no question. It's just sometimes there is no mid ground, you know. But I mean, in the end, the director's a director. So if you're on a film where you don't feel you're contributing anything to the project, then I don't feel, you know, I don't want to be there. So yeah, I mean, it's you know, personality clashes happen everywhere, don't they? You know, that's one of the tricks really of the whole process is finding, you know, getting a group of people together that all get on, and even if they have conflicting ideas, they're able to work them through and discuss them and go down one avenue. But I say, in the end, the director's a director. There's no question about that.
I think that's also something that the prep period can be really helpful for, is learning a way to communicate, getting that trust between you and the director, for instance, and having that ability to communicate. So later, when you're under stress on a set, the director doesn't feel that you're personally against him. You've got that communication going, and you know that it's just ideas that you're bouncing back and forth, and also you know the director better by then, so you know that maybe right after lunch is the wrong time to give him a new idea or something like that, or before you tell him something, give him something to eat. You know, some directors are like that. You know, so you know better how to handle it. So I think the prep period is so important to get the relationship onto a good, solid basis, so you can have disagreements later on.
Yeah, it'd be sad if you couldn't have disagreements, wouldn't it, really?
Cool. Have we got anyone else?
When you find that a shot that you have planned and rehearsed actually doesn't work when you go to shoot it, how do you then start again and come up with something else that does work?
Well, that's the that's the question, isn't it? I mean, that's experience, and it's knowing when to cut your losses and start again, you know, and not to be kind of ashamed of it either. But that's just all part of the process, isn't it? You know, I mean,
I think
it's not, you know, you can prep a film till you're blue in the face, but at some point you've got to face it on the set and you've got to make it work on the set. And some, as you say, sometimes things don't work and then you have to come up with a solution. But I don't think there's any trick to it other than
Well,
just be a bit
I
open
think-
to different
I think-
possibilities.
I think what you said is being able to judge when it's time to
Yeah,
cut your
yeah.
losses. And also when you go up to the director to say, look, this isn't working, we got to rethink this. It's a good idea to have another alternative solution in your head. So you're not just
Yeah.
giving him negative news
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you're giving something positive too.
Yeah, but to the whole crew, it's death if you just sort of stand there and say, "Well, this isn't working," and that's it. I mean, so what ain't anybody gonna do?
Any other questions from the class? Cool, yeah, Renee.
I was just wondering, how do you make connections? Because it seems like you get quite busy during the film sets. Even when you're beginning, it seems like it's quite hard to make connections throughout the industry.
Connections like networking or connections with people that you're going to work with?
Like both, like mainly networking.
Networking? Well, we're not really networking on a set.
I don't really do networking.
Yeah, right. He's a really bad networker. Actually, you are. You're a really bad networker.
Yeah, I'm not really a people person. I'm surprised I'm actually here right now. No, I don't know. I really don't know how you get on in the industry. I mean, I was very lucky. I was very, very lucky because I went to film school and I had something to show and I got some work from a few different people and it just sort of steamrolled and here I am.
I think if you comport yourself well on a set, no matter what's happening or how crazy it is, that follows through. And then maybe the producer is asked by another producer, do you know anybody that could handle this? And they say, oh yeah, wait, we worked with this person. It is, if you comport yourself well, it does get commented on and it does get around. So just more stress, not to like lose your temper.
I think that's it from the.
When you initially started, how did you go about like getting work, and at what point did like people start coming to you to work on their sets?
Do they come to us now?
Yes, they
I
do,
don't know.
Raj. They do.
I really don't know. I guess very lucky. Once you've done a few things. I mean, I shot a few documentaries. They were seen. I've been at film school. A guy that was in film school that I didn't know much at film school offered me work when he was started to shoot features, and people saw those, and then it just steamrolled. So
it is your work a lot of times that
yeah, you are your work. I mean, it's this you can't just go knocking on doors looking for a job without having something to show. If you want to be a cinematographer, I mean, if you want to work on a film, then yeah. If you want to work as a camera PA or something, then you should just, as the gentleman said earlier, network. But I don't know.
Yes, okay. I think there's two questions that Michael and I won't forgive ourselves if we don't ask you before we let you go.
Oh.
about specific shots. So Michael, if you want to.
Prisoners, right? You cut to the tree outside and it's so evocative and tense, and I mean every time I think I've seen this film about 3 times now, and every time I see that tree I just feel something.
Yeah.
How many did you get? Lots of different trees, or was it was it just the one and you just knew that was going to be so
Denny knew. That was Denny. That was Denny. Yeah.
We were in the middle of a crazy day, were we going to make the day? Were we going to make the day? And then Denise says, oh, let's just do a shot pushing into the tree, which nobody knew why. It had nothing to do with the scene, and the producer was not happy, but he knew.
Yeah, we stayed, we shot a little overtime because we needed to get that shot of the tree.
Yeah, and it's a great shot.
Yeah, I'm so glad you got that shot of the tree.
For me, it's when I'm watching Sicario, and it's the scene where Emily Blunt sees the wristband of John Brown.
Yeah.
And it's done in the reflection of the table, and the camera comes out to reveal the band. The burning question I have about that, was that planned, or was that a spontaneity?
No, we found that on the day. Yeah. Jenny and I talked through a lot of the film, but we'd only storyboarded, I think, maybe the opening of the film and some specific shots, but otherwise we just talked through it, and kind of maybe we had a shot list. I'm not even sure we had that.
I think, my final question is, I think you've answered it a little bit, because I know it's going to take a really good script, but what else will it take you to come down and film your next film down in New Zealand?
I don't know, good script, yeah. No, I'd love to, yeah. I'd be there,
We love New Zealand. Are you kidding?
Take somebody to get on the phone and say, well.
New Zealand's a great
Awesome. Thank you so much for participating in this with us. Again, I sent this email thinking, nothing will probably come of it, but I'll shoot myself a minute if I send it. Thank you so much.
We're glad to have done it.
Yeah. Good pleasure.
I think both Ebed and I and everybody in this room look up to you, and I actually use your podcast as a teaching resource. So I appreciate it.
Great. Well, no, that's great. Thank you.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Great.
To the class, want to say goodbye, and you want to wave goodbye.
All right. Yeah. Cheers, guys. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.